Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. This is my May new queer releases reading blog. I realized maybe I should intro these properly every time instead of just like jumping right in. I guess what it is pretty evident from the title, but just in case, every month I do a reading vlog where I feature 3 to 4 new queer releases that came out that month, and I give you my thoughts, and hopefully they're great and we can all find some new gems to call our favorites. This month we've got a great selection because 2 of the authors are authors that I've read from in the past, so I have very high expectations. I have 2 of the books on hand. One of them is still not out, so it hasn't even shipped yet. And I was actually originally going to do 4 books instead of 3, but I started reading the first one and I DNF'd it. So I'm very glad that I had 4 chosen at the beginning of the month, because then I felt free to cut my losses with that one. I was originally going to read Vile Lady Villains, which has the most beautiful cover, so I'm honestly pretty heartbroken. It is about Lady Macbeth and Clytemnestra if they came together in time. Like, they meet in this liminal space and then they have to figure out how to get out of this fantastical fantasy realm and back into their own worlds. And in the meantime, they develop feelings for each other. Unfortunately, the writing just really didn't work for me. When it's something just like the tone and the way the author writes, it's an easy way to know if you should DNF, because that's really not something that's going to change. You know, if it's just like a plot issue, you feel like the pacing is a little slow or something, you know, I always can gaslight myself into thinking perhaps that whatever I don't like is going to get better later on, which is why I rarely DNF, even though I should DNF a lot more. But this time I was very brave about it. Even though the cover is beautiful, I knew there was no way it was going to be above a 3, and it was probably going to be a 2 point something. I got to page like 52 or something, and then I just cut my losses. First of all, it was in first person present tense, and you know how I feel about that. There's a time and a place, and I really don't think that was the time or the place. It was reading very like YA in the way that the main character's like inner monologue was happening. Well, both main characters, but they both kind of sounded the same. But it was also overwritten. Like, all of the descriptions, there's so many similes and so many like flowery ways of describing things. And I think that was meant to evoke the feeling of classic literature, since we are, you know, borrowing these characters from classic literature, except it was a lot. And paired with the kind of unnatural feeling dialogue and like the mix of like vague old-timey sorts of wordings with like modern ways of speaking, it just like, it all came off really awkward and clunky to me. And if there's one thing I can't get over, it's unnatural dialogue. I can push past a lot, but that is not one of those things. So unfortunately, it really wasn't working for me. And also, they rename each other in like the first like couple of chapters. They literally meet and they just start calling each other like an entirely different name. Like, the author just didn't want to use their names for some reason, and she just wanted to come up with different names. But like, if I just met someone and like possibly wanted to murder them, or I thought they were gonna murder me, and then like, we're not just gonna give each other like little cutesy nicknames immediately. Like, it would be one thing if that happened after they got closer, but it happened like right away, and it just felt so bizarre. Like, it was a lot of it. It's really sad though, because the idea was really cool. I love a liminal space too, so unfortunately it was not for me. But moving along to the books that hopefully will be for me. First up, we have Decomposition book by Sara Van Os. This is a debut novel, I believe, and this follows our main character who goes to stay at her family's lake house, and she's drinking a lot, and then one morning she wakes up outside next to a dead body. And instead of calling the police, she decides she wants to spend time with this body, and she finds a notebook with the body. And so she's like reading about this woman who died, and she's kind of getting obsessed with her and maybe developing feelings for her. So this seems like a very strange, uncomfortable, potentially gross situation. I think this is supposed to be a little bit comedic as well as being horror. Regardless, I think this is going to be quite memorable. This is quite the concept, so I'm very excited about this. Next, I have The Bone Door by Frances White, and I think this is so beautiful. I don't always like sprayed edges. It depends if they feel like intentional, you know, like if they really have a vision, and I feel like this is a vibe, so I'm really enjoying this. Anyway, this is about Hop, who wakes up in this labyrinth and he doesn't know how he got there. He doesn't recognize the girl that's with him. He doesn't know what is going on. He must complete impossible tasks in order to get out of this realm, this labyrinth, this maze. The concept of this sounds so cool. There's like, you know, we love a labyrinth, we love realms, we love challenges, puzzles, mystery, you know, all of this sounds right up my alley. This sounds like so much fun. And I read The Voyage of the Damned by Frances White earlier this year in my water fantasy reading vlog, and I loved it. I had so much fun. So I think this is going to be a big win for me because this plot sounds even cooler than that one, and I already know that I can enjoy a book by Frances White quite a bit, so I have very high expectations for this. And then finally, my most anticipated book of the entire year is Bone of My Bone by Johanna Van Veen. My favorite book last year was My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna Van Veen. I also read Blood on Her Tongue, which was in my top like 15, I think, or 16, or I don't know. It was a 4.75. My Darling Dreadful Thing was a 5. So I am so excited to read Johanna Van Veen's newest book. Bone of My Bone is about a young nun who is fleeing from her convent, and then a peasant woman who's fleeing from her town, and they end up in the woods together, and they come across the gilded skull of a saint in a dead man's arms. And the legend is that if you reunite the skull with the body of a saint, you'll get like power or wishes or something, goodwill, I don't know. So they team up and try to go on some sort of expedition to reunite the skull with the body. I'm sure danger ensues. I'm sure lesbianism ensues. And this also takes place in the 1600s. And honestly, even if I wasn't already obsessed with Johanna Van Veen, I would be so excited for this because I love like a weird, dark, religion-based fantasy. I was just talking about how much I want a good dark religious fantasy book because I was reading The Devils and it hit some of the things that I wanted it to, but it didn't hit others. And I was like telling my wife, like, this is what I need in a novel. Like, this is my wish list. And then literally like the next day, I saw the announcement about this book. So this was for me. Johanna's in my mind, and I hope she stays there and writes me all the things that I want because I'm so excited about this. I have super high expectations, so I'm honestly a little bit scared, but I can't wait, and I will let you know how these books go for me. I just tried to set up my whole tripod in front of the cat tree so I could film Pigeon while I was giving you this update, but of course, as soon as I set it up, she left. And now she's just wandering around, so here we are. I'm sorry, this is a much less interesting shot. But I am a little bit over halfway in Decomposition book, and I got so much further than I thought I was going to. I was expecting to just get through like a third of it today, but I'm already more than halfway through. It's a super quick read, very engaging, also extremely stressful. Like, I know it's a horror novel, but I can read a normal horror novel and feel like on the edge of my seat without being so out of my mind stressed. But this is just like so many people making poor decisions that it's like really stressing me out. So we have our main character, Savannah, who is staying at her family's lake house that's like in the middle of nowhere. She had a falling out with her best friend, and she is taking some time off from school and just spending time by herself with her cat, which better not die in this, I swear to God. And she is really struggling mentally, and she ends up coming across a dead body of a woman in the woods. And first she's worried she murdered her, and then she decides that she did not murder her, so it's fine. But she's not going to call the police yet because she had some calm energy when she was sitting by her. She felt comforted that it's like a person, but a person who's not going to judge her or leave her. So she decides that she's gonna wait until the body decomposes into bones before reporting her discovery to the police. So I'm stressed about that. She also finds a journal along with the body, and she sees that it was written by the woman, and it explains how she and her coworkers went on a hike, got lost, and then ended up dying in the woods. That's not a spoiler because clearly she's dead. So also reading about them making poor decisions that we know inevitably leads to them dying is also extremely stressful for me. So there's a lot happening. This feels like the stress dream version of a nightmare instead of like a spooky, scary version of a nightmare. But despite the struggles that I'm personally having with my heart rate and my blood pressure in regards to this book, I am super engaged. It's reading really fast. I want to keep picking it up. I want to keep reading it. My one complaint besides my stress is the use of slang. You know how I feel about slang. I generally don't really like it if it's going to sound dated in like 3 years, you know, like obviously, yes, this is like a girl in college in 2023. Of course, she speaks like a girl in college in 2023, but like, we don't need to say like gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, or sus, or what was another one? There was like 3 like right in a row, and it was really rough. She said like the scream, I scrumped at one point. Like, we don't need that to understand that she's like speaking like a young person in 2023. You know, it's like, just for me personally, like I don't think it adds anything. It just like makes me like wince a little bit when I read it. But that's a personal preference. I'm probably just being too fussy about it because this book does have like humor. It is quirky. It is like kind of like a dark comedy almost. So maybe she's doing it on purpose. Maybe I'm supposed to cringe at the use of slang. I don't know. My preference is no slang, but anyway, it is what it is. I'm having a good time despite my anxiety, and I'm gonna finish this today, and I will let you know how I feel after I finished. And there she is. This cat who didn't want to stay in her cat tree so I could film by her. There she is. What do you have to say for yourself? What do you have to say for yourself? All right, I am back, and I'm trying to film this really quick before the light is gone. I took a nap. It lasted longer than I intended. All right, so I finished Decomposition book, and I ended up giving this a 4. I was stressed knowing like what we were moving towards in this book, because like you reading the journal, you know that everyone involved in the journal dies, so it's like torturous, like reading about like early on in their hike, and everything's like not totally terrible yet, but you know that it's going to be terrible. So like I knew sad things were going to happen, but I did not expect to cry at the end of this book. So yeah, I think she really nailed the landing with this. Like, I can't stop thinking about this. Like, the second half was so heartbreaking and sad and horrifying and devastating. This is still a book that has some humor in it. Like I said, like the writing style, the main character's like stream of consciousness, and you know, she's making jokes and references and using slang, which you know is not my favorite, but this definitely mixes that more lighthearted sort of a feeling with absolutely devastating emotions and trauma. So know that going in. This isn't like my perfect book tonally, but I think she did a really, really good job with this. The story itself and just the emotional devastation of it is definitely going to stick with me for a long time. I keep thinking about this even though I finished it a few days ago. So I'm very pleased with how this went. This is definitely a success, and I'll be looking forward to reading more from Sara Van Os in the future. I think it's Os, not O's. I need to check that. And now I don't know if you can't really see this that well, but I'm like a little bit more than halfway through The Bone Door. And this book is insane. I don't really know how to describe it. I also don't really know what's going on, to be honest. And like, I'm not really supposed to, I think. So we have Hop, who wakes up in this like weird, like hallway, like stone, I think it's like a stone like room. There's like arches connecting different rooms and hallways, and there's just like a bunch of stuff laying around. He finds a skull that he can hear and no one else can hear the skull talking, and there's like a pile of corpses, and it's just like a weird place. I think it's snowing, and like he like looks up and it's just like blackness above him. So he comes across a girl. Hop is 11, and he comes across this girl who's 14, and she has like amber orbs where her eyes should be. So she is blind, and she doesn't remember her name. He doesn't remember his name. And so they end up naming each other. He names her Amber, and then she names him Hop. So, and then suddenly there's this like a bunch of spiders that are just multiplying in these rooms. And so they run, and they go through this door that's like glowing in a wall. They end up in a kitchen that belongs to like an old lady, except her face is an owl's face. And she explains that they are trapped in this like labyrinth, and they have to get through 4 different rooms and complete the challenges in the allotted time, and then they can get to the bone door and escape this labyrinth. Our characters have no memory of who they were before this. They don't know their names. They don't know why they're there. They proceed to the first room. They run into some more kids who are missing various body parts, and who also have no memories, who have no names, and they name each other. And, you know, we keep going on, and we have this like kind of ragtag group of kids who are working together to try to get through these challenges to get out of this labyrinth. That sounds like it could be like a middle grade. And there's moments where you're like, oh, nice, they're working as a team. That's great. They're learning to trust each other. And it like is very wholesome. And then like the next second, it's like, oh, look, they're witnessing people sacrificing human babies. Like, it's not a middle grade for sure. Like, it's really fucked up. The more you read through the book, the more fucked up it gets, the more disturbing things start happening. If you don't want to hear absolutely anything, because what I've said up till this point is pretty much what the summary is with like a little bit more detail. If you don't want to hear anything, because this book is just like kind of like what is happening, skip ahead to, I'll put a timestamp. It ends up being kind of centered around this religion of these god folk, as they call them. And I love like a fantasy that's based on a religion. So I'm really enjoying that, seeing like their rituals and their terminology and their practices and everything like that. It also plays with time travel as well. And any book with time travel is automatically like kind of reality bending in a way that's like hard to wrap your head around. And I feel like there's definitely something else that's happening, like as far as like the reasons. It feels like we're going to get to the end and there's going to be like a moment that like blows your mind and you're like, oh my God, that's what was happening this whole time or something. Or maybe it really is what it seems, but we have so much information that we need to gather to still understand like why this is happening, how this is happening, everything. So I really truly don't know what's going on, but I'm very intrigued. I can't wait to see what's actually happening and uncover more secrets from this world, uncover more of the backstory, and getting into like the halfway point in the book, like we're learning more things, we're uncovering more things, and the more things we uncover, the more questions I have. I'm like getting more and more confused. Like I had different theories and it's like, well, I don't actually think that even works. Like whatever I was thinking seems like smaller than whatever is going on. I truly don't know. So this is very intriguing. I kind of don't even know how to explain it because I, like I said, do not know what's happening. But I will let you know how this goes. I have a concert tomorrow that I'm going to, but I think I'll finish tomorrow. And then I just got a notification last night that Bone of My Bone finally shipped. I think it might have released in Europe earlier because I keep seeing like pictures, people like reviewing it and people posting pictures of it. And I'm like, where is mine? Because in the US, it doesn't come out to the 29th. So anyway, I'm very excited. I think everything should be able to be done and posted next weekend, so long as Bone of My Bone doesn't take too long with USPS. But that is it. I am having a great time with these books, and I'm enjoying my general confusion with the Bone Door. I will keep you posted. Okay, I'm back in the same place because once again I'm chasing the sun. I finished The Bone Door and I really enjoyed this. There is not a lot that I can really say about this that I haven't already said, since pretty much everything that happens in the second half is revealed in some way, and it's not something that you know about from the beginning, and you shouldn't. So I can't really go into any detail. I did tear up towards the end at one point. So apparently this is the crying vlog, the crying month. I ended up giving this a 4.5. I think this was really well done. I think the concept and the world building is some of the most unique that I've seen in a fantasy novel. And to me, this really just stands out as just such an incredible concept and execution. I would love to read this again from the beginning. I think that it could potentially get bumped up. Being able to read from the beginning, knowing how it ends and knowing like what's really going on, I'd be able to catch so many more small details. So I feel like this is definitely the kind of book that if you enjoy it, you might benefit from rereading it at some point, which I definitely would like to. I think that Voyage of the Damned grabbed me a little bit faster than The Bone Door, just because this one you go into it and you really just don't know what's going on. So it's a little harder to sink into at the beginning, even though I was intrigued the entire time. But the payoff is really great. I don't want to say like to set it up and be like, oh, it's like so twisty and like mind-blowing. It's not exactly that. It's just like there's so much that you don't understand, and there's so much that the characters don't understand at the beginning, and then all of that is revealed throughout the book as they learn more and more about the world. So anyway, this was definitely a big success, definitely a Frances White fan. I cannot wait to read more in the future. And now at last, I'm reading Bone of My Bone by Johanna van Veen, with some nice sprayed edges, with like a bone with some jewels on it. I'm nearly halfway through it, and I've been thinking about this book since I woke up, so as soon as I'm done filming this clip, I'm gonna go read. This takes place during the 30 Years' War in the 1600s in Germany. And not only was there a lot of fighting between the Catholics and the Protestants, peasants were being targeted by soldiers. There was also a famine at the same time, and also a plague going on. So it was a really dire time in history. We have Sister Ursula, and she has been kind of moving from convent to convent, trying to avoid the soldiers, and she's now on her own, on her way back to her original convent, I believe. And then we have Elsbeth, whose entire family has been killed, And so she is leaving their farm and she is going up north trying to reconnect with her potentially only living relative. And the two of them meet when they are accosted by some soldiers on the road. They escape into the woods together and they end up sticking together since they're both traveling alone and it is such dangerous circumstances. In the woods, they come across a corpse slash almost a corpse of a man holding a saint's skull, and he says that he was trying to reunite the skull with the body. There is a belief that if you reunite a saint's skull with their body, they will grant you a wish. So Sister Ursula believes this wholeheartedly. Elspeth is a bit more skeptical, but the body is allegedly up north, which is where they're both heading anyway. And so they stick together and also decide to work together in order to try to reunite the skull with the body and get a wish. As they travel, they do become quite attached to one another and some feelings start to form between them. Also, there is a necromancer who is also after the skull, so they have to worry about staying ahead of him so he doesn't catch up and do horrible things, probably. And also so they can be the ones to reunite the skull with the body. So I want to talk a little bit about the horror aspects of this book, aside from like just the war and the famine and the plague and everything. So if you don't want to know anything, because this part is not on the back, I wouldn't really say it's a spoiler because it does come into play pretty early in the book. But if you don't want to know anything, I will put a time here for you to skip ahead to. Okay, so the most classical horror aspect, aside from the fact that there is a necromancer that's after them, is there are revenants, and there are different kinds of revenants, and I don't even want to try to pronounce them because they're in German and they look very confusing to me. If you're familiar with any Japanese folklore, it reminds me of how they have different categories of ghosts that have certain characteristics and certain things that they are trying to accomplish as a ghost. So this is similar with these revenants, these bodies that are dead, that have come back to life for one reason or another, and there are different types. They have different goals, they have different habits, and Elspeth and Ursula come across some of these on their journey. And revenants aren't, they're not exactly zombies, but they're like zombie-esque. And I have to say that like I've never been super interested in zombies. Like it's fine, it's whatever. I don't like really seek out zombie movies or anything like that. But the descriptions are so cool and so creepy, because I think the reason that I don't really care about zombies is that they're just kind of like gross. It's like, of course, if there was a zombie coming at me, like, yes, I would be terrified. But as far as like watching something or reading something, it's just gross. And you feel like the danger, but there's not really any like mystery or anything like creepy, eerie, spooky, which is like more my style of horror. Whereas I feel like these revenants and the way that Johanna Van Veen describes them is very spooky and eerie and creepy, as well as being gross. So I really enjoy the descriptions and the imagery that comes to mind with these revenants as she describes them. I think that's pretty much it for this like spoiler-ish section. Not really a spoiler, but just in case, since that is not on the blurb. I am extremely intrigued by everything that is happening. There's so many ways that this could go right now that I just don't really know where we're going, but I'm very excited to find out. And I'm also kind of entertained by how bone forward all three of these books are, because we had Decomposition book where she is talking to a corpse and her whole thing is that she's going to wait until the corpse turns into bones. Then I have The Bone Door, which is called The Bone Door, and Hop has the skull on his chest that he's talking to. And now we have this, which is called Bone of My Bone, and they have a skull, and yes, they have spoken to the skull. So I guess this is just like talk to your corpses, celebrate Skeleton Month or something. I don't know what is happening, but Anyway, I'm having a great time, not necessarily because of that, but I mean, it's all working for me. So I am going to go read now. That's really all I want to do, and I will let you know when I finish this. I just filmed this whole intro, but no, I didn't. I did not film this because it was not recording. So, me again to me, and me for the first time for you. I finished Bone of My Bone, and I ended up giving this a 4.5. And I hate how, since this was like a 5-star prediction, that like a 4.5 seems like a bummer now, when in like any other situation, a 4.5 is like a huge success. But a 4.5 is still a banger. So let's talk about it. I think the most accurate way of describing this is a folk horror with the structure of a fantasy, because it really has that kind of like classic fantasy feeling with our main characters on a quest to do a specific task where they're reuniting the body and the skull of the saint. They're looking to get a wish from the saint, and then they have an adversary who's on their tail that they have to avoid. So that feels very like quest-based fantasy. But it's also definitely a horror with all of the folklore elements and the witchcraft and the religious elements as well. I really enjoyed the folklore, the history, the religion, all of that. The atmosphere, the time period, the characters, the descriptions of the horror. Also, if you want like corpse horror, Johanna Van Veen is for you, because that is in all of her books. My only like critique is that I feel like the end felt a little bit abrupt, and I felt that way with Blood on Her Tongue as well, but not at all with My Darling Dreadful Thing. So I don't know, I just felt like we could have expanded the ending a little bit more. It isn't like a huge deal, but it's just something that I noticed that made it feel like not the perfect book to me. But I mean, I love her writing. I love just the atmosphere of her books. Also, this being more folk horror rather than gothic horror, I guess I'm just super predictable because I just love gothic horror. But I mean, I also love folk horror, but I love gothic horror more. So overall, honestly, I did really enjoy my time with this. Johanna Van Veen is definitely one of, if not my favorite author right now. Her writing just works for me. And after reading this and the romance aspects, I'm even more excited for her book that's coming out next year, which is, I don't know if it's a fantasy romance or if it's a romantasy, but it's like fairies and it's epistolary and it's a sapphic romance. And I'm really excited because I think the chemistry between her characters is really good. And I'm excited to see what she can do with a romance when it's just a romance and when you don't have like all of these horror elements, where this is more of like a love story than a romance, because I mean, it can't really be like a romance. But I'm super excited for her book next year. I think that I'm gonna be swooning over it a lot, because you can like kind of swoon a little, you can try, but then you're like immediately brought back to the horror. So overall, a success. And overall in this video, also a success. I mean, I had a 4 and 2 4.5s. That is a very successful month. If we're not counting the fact that I did DNF a book that I was originally going to read for this video, then I guess maybe it's not the most successful month, but if we're not counting that, then this is definitely my most successful queer new releases reading blog. And also my most corpse heavy reading blog. So that's all I have for this video. Next month is going to be a little weird because I'm going out of town, but I'm going to try to get out my weekly video. I might end up doing 3 videos instead of 4 for the month of June. We'll see. I'm going to try my best. But there will still be a queer new releases reading vlog next month, no worries, and another themed reading vlog as well. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought, if you're excited to read them, or what new releases you've been reading this month. I would love to know. If you like this video, please subscribe and give this video a like, and I'll see you next time. Bye!